This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, so now let's get into the story, right? Where people obviously want to find out. Brian Flores has been signed as a senior defense assistant and linebackers coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, remember the Rooney Rule originates with that family also. And in a way, I got to tell you, this is what we call on a judicial level psychological warfare. This is a shot at the bow. And now the Brian Flores case takes a hit. His lawyers are probably questioning all of this, right? Because the idea is they don't hire. But you know how many coaches get fired as head coaches and then have to become coordinators or position coaches and work their way back up again? Happens all the time, right? Dan Quinn was, right, for a couple of years, and he's trying to work his way back to being a head coach. So he's back at being a coordinator. Vic Fangio, after a couple of years as a head coach for Denver, gets fired, and he can't get a job as a head coach. He could have gotten a job as a coordinator, but that's just what it is. And Fangio is way more proven as a head coach, as a defensive coordinator, than actually Flo is. Flo's only been under the wings of Belichick. And now he had a little bit with the Dolphins, but Fangio's been in several places, and his defense has always been absolutely awesome wherever he goes. So this is kind of the evolution, and this is part of the argument in the case that the NFL is going to have. So he's going to have very, 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 he's going to struggle. It's going to be almost impossible for him to prove any of the racism, even though we know it exists, even though we know the NFL, you could say 31 teams or 30 or 28 or 27 or 25 of the teams in general have problems with hiring minorities. We know that's the truth. We know it. But the general doesn't help you in the individual case. And so here's the NFL, where Houston ends up hiring a minority. Miami ends up hiring a minority, so it kind of goes against it. And then he looks bitter when he adds Houston, and then he goes after the league, but then the league, somebody then throws him a bone and hires him, and he takes the job. So by him taking the job, he's also saying that that while the system may be flawed, he still wants to help and be part of the system because another minority's been given an opportunity. What would be ignorant by him would be not to accept the opportunity. This is where I tell you all the time, Tim Tebow and Colin Kaepernick, I lost some respect for both of them as athletes. And why? Because they come from this, and I hate to stereotype, but I'm gonna stereotype. They come from this millennial Generation Z part of life, and they were shunned after they had opportunities at quarterbacks. But how come they didn't do what Joe Theismann did? How come they didn't do what Warren Moon did to get to the Pro Football Hall of Fame? He went to Canada after the NFL gave him the middle finger. So did Cam Wade. So did Mark Dixon. So did Ricky Williams. So did Doug Flutie. So did Jeff Garcia. So why didn't Tebow, if he thought he could play quarterback, why does he force the league to try to give him a job as a quarterback in a league that he doesn't belong? Why doesn't he go to the CFL to prove? But he didn't. He waited years and then took an opportunity from somebody else in baseball, and then took another opportunity from somebody else at tight end. And Colin Kaepernick, and he's lucky because he had the Mets wanted to make money, and Urban Meyer was his buddy. That's the only reason. But in Cap's case, he could have gone and didn't. So I give Flo credit for doing what everybody else does, right? So, I was in traditional radio. The idiot program director that was in place said, no, we don't need you. Fine with me. I'm happy. I'm out. Doesn't mean I give up. No, I try something else. And guess what? This is way more successful now. But it's a matter of having determination. But that's old school that's in me. Old school wasn't enough in Tebow and wasn't enough in Colin Kaepernick. I give Flo credit. Now, having said all that, the NFL is just strengthening their case. They threw him a bone. The team that came up with the Rooney Rule hires, Brian Flores. So the vine has been extended. You took it, right? So now the NFL can go again and say, well, wait a minute. The Giants are going to say, there was no racism here. We did our process. He can say whatever he wants. And whatever Belichick thought, nobody talked to Belichick here. Did Belichick tell you that he got it from us? Because he didn't get it from us. He's just hearing reports. And by the way, and so in the end, those of us that had logic, we knew Daboll was going to go there once they hired the Buffalo GM. That's kind of what they're doing. What the hell is Denver doing right now? They hire Hackett in order to try to get Rodgers. What does Green Bay do? They bring back Tom Clements in order to keep Aaron Rodgers. Duh! Which, by the way, when they hired Philbin with the Miami Dolphins, I knew, and still know one more, but I knew about 4 people in the building, and all of them to a man said, why hire Joe Philbin? I'd rather give Tom Clements the job. He's a little rough on the edges, but I'd rather give him the job. That's kind of what they told me, because they told me that Tom is kind of a gruff guy a little bit, or some, he's kind of a hard ass, you know what I mean? But Philbin was one of those guys that is not even considered a frontline coach that's going to really command a lot of respect from players. And so it's just one of those things. So now the NFL is going to be able to use this as ammunition. Okay, so you can't prove that the Giants had racism. Miami certainly has no racism. Houston has no racism whatsoever. They hired a minority. And the Denver Broncos, dude, you said they were drunk and disheveled. Where's your proof? John Elway can go after him for character assassination on that. You can't do something like that and just say, oh, well, the guy was drunk and all that. Well, how do you know? I mean, I told you, he looks like the human Sharpay. So it's going to be a he said, and then it's over. So he can't win that case. So that all this does today, okay, well, I'm happy for him because he gets an opportunity. And in that team, at least he'll be able to grow there. Whether he's able to get out of that place, I don't know, because he ratted on Belichick and all of that. But this is the same thing as the NFL giving Eric Reed and throwing him a bone a couple of years ago also. It didn't matter. Their lawyers are more powerful. They're going to be better at arguing all these cases. And now they're going to keep showing examples that, hey, nobody blackballed him. He just wanted a head coaching job, and the teams that wanted to hire didn't hire him. That's it. So you can't do anything about it. So to me, it's all about pay for lose. If he doesn't have tangible evidence in pay for lose, he will never be able to win this case, because he's not going to win the case based on the race part, even though we know there's a problem. We know there's a problem, but it's called a court of law, and it's an individual case, and you cannot bring in other cases or other examples until you prove yours first. And those cases have nothing to do, because it's all, again, hearsay, nothing can be proven, and so there's nothing tangible. You can't explain why Marvin Lewis didn't get a job for years, or Tony Dungy, because it took those guys a while before they got their gigs, and then they finally got their gigs, and then they took off. We all know that. We watched it. We know the league has a problem, still has a problem, a monster problem. But individually, Brian Flores will have almost an impossible shot at proving this, I think. That's my opinion. Okay?
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.